My husband suddenly went bankrupt. That very night, he rushed our son and me onto a boat to a remote, deserted island, claiming he was protecting us from his dangerous creditors. Worried sick about his safety, I snuck back halfway through the journey. But when I reached our mansion, I found him throwing a wild party, with a gorgeous woman wrapped tightly in his arms. His best friend, Marcus, laughed and teased him. "Man, you sent your wife and son to that godforsaken island where nothing grows. How are they even going to survive?" My husband replied as if he were talking about the weather. "Amber's organic pet food factory shut down recently. I repackaged all that unsold dog kibble and shipped it to the island. It's more than enough to keep them fed for a few years." The woman snuggled closer into his chest, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Babe, you're so good to me and our baby." She gently caressed her still flat stomach. He pinched her nose affectionately. "You're so innocent and sweet. If I don't look out for you, who will? For your sake, I had to banish that she-devil to that remote island. Otherwise, if she found out you were pregnant, she'd tear you to pieces. Just hang in there. Once you give birth and we raise the baby to 2 years old, I'll bring them back. By then, it'll be a done deal, and there's nothing she can do about it." Standing in the shadows, I felt like I had been struck by lightning. Cold sweat drenched my back. 3 years later, my phone finally rang. It was him. "Chloe, how are you and our son doing? I'm ready to come and pick you up now." I glanced at the devastatingly handsome man sleeping soundly beside me and smiled coldly. "We're doing great. My new husband treats both me and your son wonderfully." There was a sudden silence on the other end of the line, followed by a dry chuckle. He clearly thought I was joking. "You really haven't changed at all, have you? Still trying to push my buttons? Look, I know you're mad because I didn't visit or call you guys for 3 years. But Chloe, you have to understand the reality. I just finally cleared all my debts. The moment I was free, I called you. I'll be at the island the day after tomorrow to bring you and Leo back." Before I could cut him off, my phone screen flickered and died. Out of battery. My new husband, Christian, stirred in his sleep. He rolled over, wrapping his powerful arm around my waist, pulling me effortlessly back into the warm covers. After a passionate, exhausting night, we both needed the sleep. By the time I woke up in the afternoon, Christian had already left for his company. Our son Leo had been driven to his elite private prep school by our security team. Feeling refreshed, I decided to go to the local high-end supermarket to buy some ingredients. I wanted to cook a delicious steak dinner for my husband and son tonight. As I was picking out some fresh, marbled ribeyes, a woman's voice suddenly sneered from behind me. "Chloe." I turned around. It was Amber. She was flanked by 2 maids, one of whom was holding a 2-year-old girl. No DNA test was needed. The little girl looked exactly like Ethan. They were cast from the very same mold. Amber looked incredibly shocked to see me standing there. My eyes instantly locked onto the vintage emerald necklace resting against her collarbone. My blood boiled. That necklace belonged to my mother. It was her final gift to me before she passed away. 3.5 years ago, Ethan told me he had accidentally lost it. We had called the police and he pretended to be so devastated that he didn't sleep for 3 days straight, searching everywhere. He had apologized to me with red, teary eyes, and I had wept for weeks over the loss. He knew exactly how much that necklace meant to me. It was the only piece of my mother I had left. Yet he lied to me and gave it to his side chick. Aside from the necklace, she was dripping in designer labels and luxury jewelry. Clearly, Ethan had been pampering her over the last 3 years. Amber put on a fake, sweet smile. "Well, hello, Chloe. Welcome back." Her tone was dripping with provocation. 3 years ago, whenever she saw me, she would lower her eyes respectfully and call me Mrs. Miller. Back then, she owned a pet food business. My mother-in-law loved dogs and frequently bought specialty kibble from her. Amber had always played the part of a polite, well-mannered girl. Who would have thought she was actually a scheming, home-wrecking leech? Without a second thought, I reached out, grabbed the necklace, and ripped it off her neck. The sharp tug left a bright red scratch on Amber's pale skin. She gasped in pain, clutching her neck. "Ouch! This necklace belongs to me," I said coldly, clutching the emeralds in my palm. "Don't you dare flaunt it in front of me again, or I won't be this polite next time." I didn't want to waste my energy making a scene with her. When a man cheats, the root of the problem is always the man. Amber looked half aggrieved and half furious, her voice rising so the surrounding shoppers could hear. "I only call you Chloe out of respect for Ethan. He gave me this necklace. I suggest you return it to me. Besides, Ethan and I are together now. This is our daughter. I've always believed that women shouldn't make things hard for other women, which is why I always tell Ethan to treat you well." I let out a harsh laugh. This woman truly had a gift for twisting the truth. She did the dirtiest, most shameless things, yet managed to sound so righteous. She took her daughter from the maid's arms and thrust the toddler toward my face. "Sweetheart, say hi to the old lady." She stood there with a look of supreme generosity, making it seem as though she was being magnanimous while I was just a petty, bitter woman. The little girl mumbled cutely, Hi, old lady. My anger flared, but I had no intention of taking it out on an innocent child. Ignoring Amber, I spun around to walk away. Suddenly, Amber grabbed my arm. Before I could even shake her off, she dramatically threw herself and her child onto the polished floor, making it look like I had violently pushed them. She let out a loud, theatrical cry of pain, and the little girl began to sob hysterically. Within seconds, a crowd of onlookers gathered, whispering and pointing at me. How could she lay a hand on a woman holding a baby? How vicious. No matter what the issue is, you don't take it out on a child. I stood there, my face freezing into a mask of pure ice. I pointed down at Amber. She's a homewrecker who destroyed my family. And I didn't touch her. She threw herself down to play the victim. It's just a cheap trick to secure her sugar daddy. With that, I turned on my heel and walked out. Within half an hour, my phone was blowing up with calls from Ethan. Amber had obviously run to him crying. I refused to answer. Then, a flurry of texts came flooding in on Snapchat. When did you get back? Why didn't you wait for me to pick you up? You went too far today. What happened between Amber and me is my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Where are you? I'll come pick you up. Let's sit down as a family and talk this out. Chloe, I want you to know something. No matter how many children Amber and I have, you will always be the most important woman in my heart. My love for you will never change. I felt an overwhelming wave of nausea. In truth, the moment I returned, I had already instructed my lawyers to begin building a case against him. A moment later, a notification popped up on my phone. It was an alert for a loan approval. The loan amount was $50 million. Over the past 3 years, Ethan had used my personal information, conspiring with corrupt bank managers to take out loans totaling $1 billion behind my back. My lawyers had tracked the money trail. Every single cent of that $1 billion had been transferred directly into Amber's personal accounts. During those 3 years, he had spent money on her like water, buying her luxury sports cars, penthouses, and starting bidding wars at high-end charity galas just to put a smile on her face. In the beginning of my exile, I had tested him. I had called him, sobbing over the phone. Ethan, our son has a raging fever. He's incredibly sick and there are no meds on this island. Please send some money so I can take him to a hospital. He had simply sighed over FaceTime and said, boys need to build up their immune systems. Just use cold compresses. Chloe, to be honest with you, I'm so broke I can barely afford instant ramen right now. I don't have a single penny. We have to be strong. We'll get through these hard times together, okay? The very next day, I woke up with severe appendicitis. The pain was so agonizing I was rolling on the floor, sweating so heavily it felt like I had been pulled out of a lake. I didn't even have the strength to hold my phone. My young son Leo had initiated a FaceTime call to Ethan, begging him to come save me and take me to a hospital. Ethan's eyes showed a brief flicker of concern, but it quickly vanished. He simply told our son, just rub your mommy's tummy. She'll be fine in a bit. It's probably just a mild stomach ache. She won't die from it. Then he hung up in a hurry. After I collapsed and lost consciousness from the pain, Leo was absolutely terrified. He called Ethan again, crying. But all he got was a harsh scolding from his father. Tell your mother to stop faking it. When Leo tried to call back, the phone had been switched off. Appendicitis might be a routine issue, but the pain of a near rupture is torturous. It was at that exact moment I realized, a husband who has had a change of heart is more terrifying than any monster. I screenshotted the loan notification and sent it to my lawyer via WhatsApp. Secure this evidence. Prepare to file the lawsuit when I give the word. I took a deep breath, calmed my racing heart, and went home to cook a beautiful 4-course dinner. Christian was absolutely thrilled when he walked through the door. He didn't even put down his briefcase before wrapping his arms around me and kissing my cheek. Sweetheart, you're too good to me. I definitely need to reward you tonight. His idea of a reward always involved a very long, passionate night in our bedroom. He was utterly insatiable. I gave him a playful shove. Behave yourself. After some sweet, teasing banter, his expression turned serious as he got down to business. Ethan sent me an invitation. He's hosting a massive birthday bash for his daughter. Our eyes met, and we both shared a knowing, cold smile. How could I possibly miss such a grand occasion? 2 days later, Christian and I arrived together at the massive estate for the party. As we walked in, Christian had to step aside to take an urgent international conference call, so I went in ahead of him. I looked around the sprawling, French-style estate. It was located in the most expensive, exclusive neighborhood in the city. While Ethan was lying to me about being bankrupt, leaving a ton of rancid dog food for his wife and son to eat on a deserted island, he had dropped $1.5 billion to outbid everyone else for this mansion. All because Amber liked it. A wave of absolute hatred crashed over me, making my steps firm and filled with quiet fury as I walked inside. As I entered the grand ballroom, Amber, dressed in a breathtaking custom gown and holding her daughter, spotted me immediately. A smug, mocking look flashed in her eyes as she sauntered over. Look, sweetheart, she said loudly, drawing the attention of nearby guests. Your Auntie Chloe is here to wish you a happy birthday. She raised her voice further. Let's ask Auntie Chloe what beautiful gift she brought for you today? Her loud voice immediately drew Ethan over. When Ethan saw me, shock registered in his eyes, quickly followed by a patronizing look of relief. I'm glad you've finally come to your senses. Amber is generous enough not to hold what happened at the supermarket against you. It seems you've finally learned to control that nasty temper of yours. That's a good step forward. His eyes then landed on the vintage emerald necklace resting on my neck. His face darkened, and he spoke in a commanding, yet soft tone. Give the necklace back to Amber. She's been in poor health lately. I took her to see a spiritual master, and he said only this specific emerald can protect her energy. A beautiful piece like this should belong to someone who actually needs it. That's how it holds true value. Be a good girl. I'm incredibly wealthy again now. I can buy you as many necklaces as you want. Amber is young. You're the older, mature one. You should let her have this. Let her have it. My mother's necklace. He wanted me to give my own mother's legacy to his mistress? I laughed, a sound dripping with pure rage. Ethan, I've met shameless people in my life, but you take the crown. This necklace was left to me by my mother. You stole my property to give to your cheap side chick, and now you have the nerve to ask me to hand it over. Amber immediately began to sob softly, looking as though I had subjected her to the ultimate cruelty. Chloe, you called me a homewrecker and attacked me at the mall the other day. Today is Lily's birthday party. I beg of you, stop throwing that word around to humiliate me, please. I can take the abuse, but I'm just so worried that your childish screaming will embarrass Ethan and his parents in front of all these high-profile guests. I watched them both like I was watching a comedy show. Oh look, a shameless homewrecker suddenly cares about dignity. How fascinating. You, Amber clutched her chest, gasping for air as if she were having a sudden medical emergency. Ethan's face twisted in panic and rage. He lunged forward and grabbed the necklace on my neck, pulling it with brutal force. The sharp chain dug into my skin, and tears of pain welled up in my eyes. Amber chose this exact moment to pour more fuel on the fire. Chloe said she would rather throw the necklace into the trash than let me have it. Ethan, can we just buy it from her instead? Hearing this, Ethan lost his mind. He snatched the emerald necklace and slammed it violently onto the marble floor. With a sickening shatter, the precious emerald broke into several jagged pieces. I froze. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I could literally hear the sound of my own heart breaking into pieces. Ethan roared at me. A necklace. You're throwing a tantrum over a stupid, useless necklace. Let's see how you throw a tantrum now that it's gone. A primal fury took over me. With a wild cry, I lunged at Ethan, my nails clawing at his face. You monster. Give me back my mother's necklace. It was all I had left of her. Amber rushed over, pretending to play the peacemaker while whispering maliciously in my ear. Chloe, our husband is furious. You need to drop your attitude and do something to make him happy, okay? Oh, by the way, Chloe, there's an old tradition in my hometown. The first time a stepmother meets the child, she has to let the baby spit her formula right in her face. It proves you'll love the child unconditionally. Come on, kneel down, and let our sweet baby spit on your face. This is our husband's precious daughter. If you do it, he won't be mad at you anymore. Take my advice, kneel down. My vision turned red. I raised my hand and slapped Amber across the face with all the strength I had. You filthy, disgusting leech. You really want to die today, don't you? I'll gladly oblige. I threw her to the ground and began beating her furiously. The screams and chaos grew louder, drawing almost every single guest in the ballroom to circle around us. Ethan, burning with rage, violently yanked me off Amber and delivered a stinging slap across my face. If you dare to act like a wild animal in my house again, I will ruin you. Ethan's parents, Richard and Victoria, came rushing through the crowd, pointing and screaming at me. You crazy bitch. What kind of event is this? How dare you make a scene here and humiliate the Miller family? Call the security guards. Throw this garbage out. She is a curse on our family. She should have been locked away on that deserted island forever. We never should have let her back. Amber was helped up from the floor by her maids. She put on a saintly, pitiful expression. Chloe clearly came here tonight just to ruin the party. Even if we throw her out, she'll just find a way to sneak back in and cause more trouble. She's so wild and aggressive, behaving no different from a stray dog. It's terrifying. Why don't we lock her in the dog cage in the basement first? We can let her out after our baby's birthday party is over. Without a single shred of hesitation, Ethan turned to his security team and barked. Grab her. Lock her in the basement dog cage. No one is to let her out without my explicit permission. On his command, two massive security guards grabbed my arms, pinning me down as they prepared to drag me to the basement. As I struggled with everything I had, a voice cut through the ballroom like ice, a voice that instantly brought me absolute peace. If anyone dares to put my wife in a cage, I will personally destroy them. The ballroom temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in a single second. Every guest turned toward the grand entrance of the French estate. Standing in the soft glow of the crystal chandeliers was a man whose presence commanded instant, absolute silence. Christian Vance. He wore a bespoke dark charcoal suit, his broad shoulders and commanding posture radiating a dangerous, quiet authority. Behind him stood 6 tall, black-suited men, his personal tactical security team, their faces impassive, their eyes sharp as razors. Mr. Vance. Richard Miller, Ethan's father, gasped. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor. Victoria's face drained of all color. The chairman of the Vance conglomerate? What is he doing at our party? In the business world, the Vance conglomerate was a titan. They owned 80% of the city's commercial real estate, held the controlling shares in every major bank, and backed the international shipping lines. Ethan Miller's entire empire was nothing more than a tiny speck of dust compared to Christian Vance. The 2 security guards who were pinning my arms froze, their hands trembling. Christian didn't even look at the guests. His dark, piercing eyes locked onto me. When he saw the bright red slap mark on my cheek, and the tears of pain in my eyes, an aura of pure, terrifying rage exploded from him. He walked forward. His polished leather shoes made a slow, deliberate sound against the marble. Clack, 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 like a death countdown. "Remove your hands from my wife," Christian said softly. His voice wasn't loud, but it echoed clearly off every high wall in the ballroom. The 2 guards immediately let go of me, stumbling backward in absolute terror. Bowing their heads, Ethan stepped forward, trying to maintain his pathetic composure, though his knees were visibly shaking. "Mr. Vance, welcome. I didn't realize you were coming to my daughter's birthday party. But excuse me, did you just say wife? You must have mistaken this crazy woman for someone else. She's my ex-wife Chloe." Bang. Before Ethan could finish his sentence, Christian's chief of security stepped in, delivering a heavy, brutal kick directly to Ethan's stomach. Ethan let out a wheezing gasp, flying backward and crashing into the towering glass champagne pyramid. Hundreds of crystal glasses shattered in a deafening cascade of noise, spraying sweet wine and broken glass all over Ethan, Amber, and his parents. "Ethan!" Amber shrieked, clutching her daughter, scrambling backward in fear. Christian didn't even give Ethan a second glance. He walked straight up to me, took off his hand-tailored suit jacket, and wrapped it gently around my shivering shoulders. His warm, large hand cupped my bruised cheek, his thumb softly brushing away a stray tear. "I'm sorry I was 3 minutes late, my love," Christian murmured, his voice filled with an unbearable tenderness that made my nose sting. "Did he hit you with his right hand?" I looked into my husband's deep, dark eyes and nodded faintly. "Yes." Christian turned his head slowly toward Ethan, who was groaning on the floor, covered in wine and glass shards. "Break his right arm," Christian ordered flatly. "No. Stop." Victoria screamed, throwing her body over Ethan. "Mr. Vance, you can't do this. This is a private residence. We are high society people. I'll call the police." Christian let out a cold, dark chuckle. "Call them. In fact, let me call the chief of police for you." He raised his hand. His assistant, Julian, immediately stepped forward, holding a sleek black tablet and a stack of thick legal files. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian's voice echoed across the silent ballroom, crisp and professional. "Allow me to introduce Mrs. Chloe Vance, wife of Chairman Christian Vance, and co-owner of the Vance Global Investment Group." The entire ballroom erupted into an uproar. "What? Chloe is married to Christian Vance. The most powerful man in the country is her husband. My God." Ethan Miller treated the chairman's wife like trash. Amber sat frozen on the floor, her eyes wide with absolute soul-crushing terror. No. She was trapped on a deserted island. She was eating dog food. How could she be married to Christian Vance? Christian gently took my hand, pulling me into his side, his strong arm wrapping securely around my waist. "Ethan Miller," Christian said, looking down at the groveling man on the floor. 3 years ago, you pretended to go bankrupt. You abandoned my wife and my stepson on a deserted island, leaving them with unsold, expired pet kibble from Amber's failed factory." The guests gasped in horror. "What? He fed his own wife and son dog food. And he claimed he was bankrupt, while buying a $1.5 billion mansion for his side chick. What a disgusting, evil monster." Ethan struggled to sit up, wiping wine from his face, his voice cracking hysterically. "So what? She was my wife back then. I can treat her however I want. Besides, she's fine now, isn't she? Mr. Vance, you're a billionaire. Why are you making a big deal out of an old story?" "An old story?" I stepped forward, pulling the loan documents and bank Notifications up on my phone screen, projecting them directly onto the massive LED screen in the ballroom via Julian's tablet. The screen lit up, displaying the bold black text of a master banking audit. Total unauthorized loans. $1 billion borrower. Chloe Miller forged. Guarantor. Ethan Miller recipient account. Amber Reed personal. Ethan. I said coldly, my voice ringing through the hall. Over the past 3 years, while I was living on that island, you conspired with corrupt bank managers to take out $1 billion in fraudulent loans, using my personal information and my late mother's estate as collateral. I pointed at Amber, who was cowering under the table. You transferred every single penny into Amber's accounts, buying her this mansion, her sports cars, her luxury jewelry, and funding her lavish lifestyle. Amber's face turned paper white. I didn't know. Ethan told me it was his own money. He told me he was a billionaire. You didn't know? I sneered. Amber, you were the one who signed the luxury estate transfer deeds as the co-conspirator. And just yesterday morning you took out another $50 million loan under my name. Ethan's father, Richard, fell to his knees, clutching his chest. $1 billion. $1 billion in fraudulent loans. Ethan, are you crazy? Where did you get that kind of money? Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes darting frantically toward the doors. It doesn't matter. The bank approved it. Chloe is the primary borrower. If the bank comes collecting, they have to take her assets first. Is that so? Christian smiled. A smile so cold it could freeze fire. He tapped his phone once. The grand double doors of the ballroom were violently pushed open. A dozen uniformed federal officers, accompanied by the city district attorney and the chief of the banking fraud division, marched into the room. Ethan Miller, Amber Reed, Richard Miller, Victoria Miller, the district attorney called out, pulling out a stack of red-stamped federal arrest warrants. You are under arrest for multi-billion-dollar financial fraud, identity theft, corporate conspiracy, and illegal money laundering. Ethan's eyes bulged. What? Fraud? The bank manager promised me this was safe. He said the loan was backed by Vance International. Julian, Christian's assistant, stepped forward with a cold smile. Mr. Miller, did you really think a low-level bank manager could approve a $1 billion loan without Chairman Vance's personal oversight? Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. Chairman Vance approved every single one of your fraudulent applications over the last 3 years, Julian explained smoothly. We allowed you to dig your own grave. We let you transfer every cent to Amber's accounts so that we could freeze every single asset you owned in one clean sweep. No. Ethan whimpered, collapsing onto his back, his mind completely shattering. A trap. It was a trap. Every mansion, every car, every piece of jewelry, and every penny in Amber's accounts has been legally seized by the court as of 10 minutes ago, Julian added flatly. You don't own a single cent, Mr. Miller. In fact, you owe the Vance conglomerate $1.2 billion in damages and penalties. Amber let out an earth-shattering scream. My mansion. My cars. They're mine. Ethan gave them to me. She lunged toward Ethan like a feral animal, her nails digging into his face, scratching deep red bloody lines across his cheeks. You liar. You broke loser. Amber shrieks hysterically, punching Ethan repeatedly. You told me you were richer than God. You told me you would make me the queen of the city. You used to feed your wife dog food, and now you dragged me into prison with you. Get off me, you bitch. Ethan roared, punching Amber back, sending her flying against the broken glass. The guests watched the two of them beating each other in the pile of wine and glass, filling the ballroom with sounds of absolute disgust and mockery. Look at them. Like two rabid dogs fighting over trash. To think they thought they were high society royalty, feeding a wife and child dog food on a deserted island? They deserve to rot in hell. I looked down at the floor near Ethan's feet. Among the wine and broken champagne glasses lay the shattered pieces of my mother's vintage emerald necklace. The deep green stones were cracked, ruined by Ethan's mindless violence. My eyes welled with fresh tears. Christian gently bent down, picking up every single piece of the shattered emerald, placing them carefully into a velvet handkerchief in his palm. He stood up, looking at Ethan with eyes filled with pure, absolute destruction. Ethan Miller, Christian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low rumble. You destroyed my wife's most cherished memory. You abandoned my stepson on a deserted island when he had a raging fever. Christian stepped forward, his polished boot landing heavily on Ethan's right arm, the arm he had used to slap me. Crack. A sickening sound of bone snapping echoed through the ballroom. Ah! Ethan let out an agonizing, blood-curdling scream, writhing on the floor, clutching his broken arm. Ethan! Victoria wailed, trying to rush forward, but federal officers snapped heavy iron handcuffs around her wrists and Richard's wrists, pinning them both. To the floor. Take them away, the district attorney ordered flatly. The federal officers dragged Ethan, Amber, Richard, and Victoria out of the grand ballroom. Amber was screaming and kicking, her toddler crying hysterically, in the arms of a social worker, while Ethan dragged his broken arm through the wine-soaked floor, weeping like a dying dog. The grand party ended in complete, absolute ruin. 3 months later, the city central courthouse was packed with hundreds of reporters, media, cameras, and high society observers. The trial of the state versus Ethan Miller, Amber Reed, Richard Miller, and Victoria Miller was the biggest scandal of the decade. I sat in the front row of the gallery, wearing an elegant ivory wool dress, holding Christian's hand. Beside us sat our son Leo, now healthy, handsome, and dressed in a neat little suit, looking at the world with bright, confident eyes. In the defendant dock sat the 4 prisoners. Ethan wore an orange jumpsuit, his right arm in a cast, his face thin, gaunt, and covered in razor burns. Amber sat beside him, her hair messy, her designer clothes replaced by prison denim, her face hollow and pale. Richard and Victoria looked 20 years older, their heads bowed in deep shame. The prosecutor stood up, presenting the final piece of evidence to the jury. "Your Honor, members of the jury," the prosecutor said, pointing at a giant digital screen. "The defense claims that Mr. Miller sent his wife and son to the island to protect them from creditors. But we have retrieved the official inspection report from the Department of Agriculture regarding Amber Reed's shutdown pet food factory." The screen displayed a terrifying red-stamped medical document. Inspection result: severe chemical contamination product, repackaged canned pet, kibble hazard, toxic heavy metals and mold. The entire courtroom gasped in horror. Mr. Miller did not just send his family to a deserted island, the prosecutor shouted, his voice echoing with righteous thunder. He knowingly shipped hundreds of crates of toxic, chemically contaminated animal feed to the island, fully aware that his wife and son would be forced to eat it to survive. This was not protection. This was calculated, prolonged attempted murder. The jury members glared at Ethan and Amber with pure, unadulterated hatred. Ethan panicked, leaping from his seat, screaming at the judge. "And no, I didn't. No, it was toxic. Amber told me it was organic. She tricked me. You cowardly rat." Amber shrieked, lunging across the dock, tearing at Ethan's cast. "You asked me for the cheapest stock. You said you wanted them to die on that island so you wouldn't have to pay child support." Silence in the court. The judge slammed his gavel down firmly. 10 minutes later, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. The judge stood up, reading the final sentence. Ethan Miller, found guilty of attempted murder, identity theft, $1 billion, financial fraud, and child endangerment. Sentenced to 35 years in state maximum security prison without possibility of parole. Amber Reed, found guilty of corporate fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and financial embezzlement. Sentenced to 25 years in state prison. Richard and Victoria Miller, found guilty of accessory to fraud and identity theft. Sentenced to 10 years each. Furthermore, the judge added coldly, all personal assets of the defendants are permanently liquidated and transferred to Mrs. Chloe Vance as compensation. Bang! The gavel struck. Ethan fell to his knees in the dock, sobbing hysterically, his mind completely broken. 35 years, 35 years. Chloe, save me. I'm Leo's father. Leo, tell them to let your daddy go. Leo sat beside me, looking at Ethan with calm, cold eyes. "You're not my daddy," Leo said softly, his small voice clear and firm. "My daddy is Christian Vance. You're just the bad man who tried to feed us trash." Ethan stared at Leo, his heart completely shattered into dust, as the prison guards dragged him down the dark hallway toward his cell. Per special court orders, during their 35 and 25-year sentences, Ethan and Amber were assigned to the prison's agricultural labor facility, working 12 hours a day processing raw animal feed for livestock farms. The man who had fed his wife dog food was now forced to shovel animal feed for the rest of his natural life. 1 year later, on a warm, sun-drenched afternoon, a grand garden party was being held at the Vance estate overlooking the ocean. High society guests, international diplomats, and business leaders gathered on the lawn, celebrating the launch of the Chloe Vance Foundation for Abandoned Women and Children, a multi-billion-dollar charitable trust funded entirely by the liquidated Miller assets. I stood on the marble terrace, wearing a magnificent emerald green silk gown. Christian walked up behind me, wrapping his strong arms around my waist, resting his chin softly on my shoulder. "Happy anniversary, my love," Christian whispered softly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a velvet jewelry box. When he opened it, my breath caught in my throat. Lying on the black velvet was a necklace, a breathtaking, peerless masterpiece. The shattered pieces of my mother's vintage emerald had been painstakingly restored by the world's finest master jeweler, set into a glowing filigree of platinum and surrounded by 99 flawless white diamonds. It wasn't just restored, it was reborn, stronger, brighter, and more magnificent than it had ever been before. I promised you, Christian murmured, gently clasping the necklace around my neck, kissing the soft skin of my collarbone. No one will ever break what belongs to you again. I turned around in his arms, looking up into his deep, loving eyes, tears of absolute happiness shining in my eyes. Far out on the lawn, our son Leo was running around with his security team, laughing brightly under the blue sky, his voice filled with pure, unburdened joy. I reached up, holding Christian's face in my hands, and pressed my lips to his, in a deep, passionate kiss. The dark island, the bitter cold, the toxic kibble, and the worthless monsters of my past were all gone forever. I had survived the storm, and in the arms of the man who truly loved me, I had found my eternal kingdom.